Okay. I will probably turn off my video and sound while you guys are going, and I'll turn it back on partway through, okay?
Okay.
I can't show my shirt part. Let's see here. I got it. Okay.
You're visible, Dwayne.
I was trying to make the shirts visible, you know. When I cut top my head off. In the old days of, portable digital cameras or portable like Polaroids, I went to Hawaii with a friend on his ticket and got back a film full of pictures. So I looked about like this. Because you couldn't check the pictures out, you just got what you developed. And that's what I got.
Okay, Dwayne, you can get it going now.
All right, folks, good evening. My name is Dwayne. I'm a science fiction fantasy buyer for University Bookstore. Really excited about tonight's event. We have in the store, I believe we just got in the signed copies of Wild Sign by Patricia Briggs, the newest Alpha and Omega book. And if we don't have any yet, we will certainly be getting more of Anne Bishop's new book in her Black Jewels universe, who is going to be guesting along tonight. The new one is The Queen's Weapons. I wanted to double check I didn't say last year's title. And they're going to be a little bit in Q&A, and I'll hang in a bit there. And of course, we carry most of their books, and if not, I can always get them for you. And hopefully, maybe next spring, we'll have the big party back in the store. I mean, if we don't have the party in the store, I can't get it thrown any Girl Scout cookies by Patty like last time we did this.
Right?
That was one of my favorite moments of all time when I made some comment about, no one ever gave me cookies because she'd read the piece from her book with the puppies, and then I get handed cookies. So that was very memorable. And I'm going to say, Patty and Ann, go ahead and take it away, and I'll be back in a bit.
Hi, I'm Patty Briggs.
And I'm Ann Bishop.
And we're here to visit with you a little bit about our new books that have come out. Wild Sign is the 6th in the Alpha and Omega. It's the 6th Alpha and Omega novel. And unless you want us to babble endlessly at each other, I think we're going to talk for a little bit, and then we would like you to think about questions that you would like to ask us.
Okay, is it my turn?
Yes, it's your turn. I try really hard not to take over, so I'm going to try really hard to stop.
Okay. I just wasn't sure if that was a cue, but I have to say, I love that horse in the background.
Is that cool?
That is gorgeous. Gorgeous. He would be friends with my house uniform.
Yeah, I have a friend who I'm going to step aside so you can see him and kind of tip the camera so you guys get a good picture of him. He's a full-size carousel horse. He's a hippocampus, so he's got the tail that comes around. And I have a friend who's a carousel horse carver. His wife runs the Santa Monica Pier Carousel, and he's worked for Disney for years. He carved most of the carousel in Disney Japan, Disney World Japan. Anyway, it's the Aladdin carousel he carved, and a lot of the little wooden statuary and things that you see around that Sugar Park he's done. But he's just freaking amazing. I really love what he can do. And this horse brought us together. We bought this horse, they brought it over, and we've become good friends ever since. He is gorgeous. He is gorgeous.
Tell Anne if she would come and visit, she could see it.
Sparky says, Sparky, for those of you who know me as my trusty assistant, Anne, but with two Anns in the room, I call Ann Bishop Ann and Sparky Sparky, so that it doesn't become confusing. Sparky says, Anne, if you would come visit, you could see my carousel horse in person.
Yes, that's true. And your other little horses too.
Yes.
It's only clear across the country.
Yeah, it's only clear across the country. And you're really allergic to all the cats and dogs I have, so it probably wouldn't be happy, but
we can leave a window open.
Sparky says we can leave a window open.
I can stay in the car with the window open.
Well, let's talk about books. Let me ask you to talk about your book, which is the second of the duology. The first one was Queen's Bargain, and it was amazing. And Queen's Weapon, let me tell you, is every bit as amazing. I'm about halfway through it, and boy, what a wild ride.
It was a wild ride writing it too. Let's see.
I haven't been as personally scarred by your books since the original Black Jewels trilogy, which I love. I absolutely love. I really am enjoying myself. This is a great book, but it is not light reading. It is easy reading. I mean, it's like chocolate. I love the way your wordsmithing works. It just grips me by the throat and rips me through it. But oh my goodness.
Well, it's that exploration of like second generation of where Damon and Lucifer's children are, and that sense of growing up in that family and rites of passage and what happens when you're the child who really doesn't fit in that family. So in some ways, I think it's becomes the orphan's journey, that the archetypal orphan's journey, that you're pushed out of home and have to find your place in the world.
Sure.
Sure. Because each of them is finding their place, but you've also got all of the angst and tension of a marriage that probably wasn't the best idea, but Damon and Cyril, they made the best choices that they could. So everybody is dealing with all of this. Plus you have Damonar as the boy that Lucifer would have been if he had lived with his dad.
Right.
If Lucifer had been able to live with his father, Damonar is the result.
Yes.
Which is pretty much.
Which is fun. I really love it. I love your characters. They're so lush and they're so accessible and just really charismatic. They just I don't know how to describe it. Let me think. It's as if your best friend was a superhero. They are so overwhelming and amazing and cool. And then you torture them to death. It's really awesome. Thank you. No, I'm just kidding. But I really love the emotions that you can evoke in me when I'm reading your books. I still, when I'm down, I pick up Lucifer's short story and reread it over and over again.
Marion?
Yes.
Lucifer and Marion? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That's the one that I will pick up too when I really just want to visit the Black Jewels and I don't want a lot of trauma.
Oh, right? It's so satisfying. It's so satisfying. And I just love it. It has such a, it's got a wonderful happy ending. It's a wonderful revenge story in its way, which is awesome. But it's a great love story too. And I think it evokes a lot of the satisfies a lot of the same things that great stories like Cinderella or not Cinderella, that's the wrong one. Sorry, Beauty and the Beast does for me, where it's, this is my monster and he will kill anybody, but he's my monster, and I find that very satisfying as a reader.
Well, I get that same feeling from Charles and Anna.
Oh, good.
In fact, I finished Wild Sign. Yay! Thank you.
Yay!
I really like that. Yay! And then I said, because there is that kind of understanding of Leia that comes through, which is different from how she's been portrayed. So I actually went to Barnes & Noble and picked up the first 3 books in that series. Because I already have all the other ones. And I said, okay, I want to start back to the beginning to see how all of these characters arc.
It's the fun part of having a long-running series, I think, that I can take these characters that I set up as being unlikable, but I knew a lot more about them. and
Mhm.
bringing out their backstory so that other people can see where they are. I really believe that most people are understandable, even villains, even bad people. If you understood where they were coming from and what their backstory was, then it would be very difficult to hate them. And as a writer, one of my favorite things to do is to take a character that people think they know and give you a little more information that changes your whole viewpoint on them. I don't expect everybody to love Leah at the end of this book, but I hope that everybody has a little different idea about her and about Bran and his responsibility in this marriage.
He used to
And
get smacked with a rolled up newspaper.
oh no, he's fine. That's not Dan, the trusty assistant of Sparky. He doesn't need to get smacked with a rolled up newspaper. The fact of the matter is that well, I don't want to spoil the book, but I will say that two traumatized people coming together at the same time is not usually a good idea.
This is true. Well, there's I don't know who the quote is from, maybe you do, but what I always remember when I'm thinking of stories is a saying that bad choices make good stories.
Yes, happy people don't make good stories.
No, they're a nice little vignette, but until you actually get them into trouble and, stab them in the heart, you don't have a story.
I have people all the time that get mad at me for doing things to the characters. And I'm like, if I didn't do nasty things to my characters, you wouldn't have a good story. You wouldn't enjoy it. So I may pseudo complain about the trauma of reading the Black Jewels books, but I go back to them all the time. I just love it. I just love the resolutions. You can't have the kind of powerful moments that you put in a book without having the trauma too, and the powerful satisfactions. I bring up a lot. I was in a living room with my friend when they were watching Game of Thrones, and I'm not going to be able to give you any characters' names because I was too traumatized by watching this series. I read the books, and it's been too long ago since then. But when they finally killed the guy who has been manipulating everybody for 7 seasons, and they finally killed him, everybody in that living room paused, and you could feel that pause through the city. I was sitting in Los Angeles, and I swear to you, the whole city went quiet. And it was 7 years of buildup to kill that person off that rippled through the psychic plane. And it was just the coolest feeling. And I didn't even watch the series, and I still felt that. And your books do that to me. There's such great satisfaction and great just resolution in your stories that makes all of the suffering worth it. It's awesome.
I have fun with Lucifer, seeing Lucifer as a dad, because as a parent, he and Damon tag team as parents. They have their same rules, and they set up the rules, and it's the same for each household, but they each do it in a different way. They have their own style. But I really love the way Lucifer is just, I draw the line and I'm standing here, try to go through me.
Right? You can just see him in the Superman pose with his wings out, right? It's cool. It's cool. It's so much fun. So I love playing with monsters. I think when I'm right, because I get to make up rules on how they interact with the real world. And it reminds me more of writing straight fantasy. It's been a while since I've written anything but urban fantasy. And urban fantasy is the real world with magic added to it. And so most of the world building is just me going through our real world and throwing in fantasy elements, instead of building up a whole magical world like the Black Jewel series, where you can, as a writer, your awesome godlike powers, and you can put all of the world building together. And so when I bring monsters into my world, I feel like it gives me, into the urban fantasy world, it gives me a little bit more of that traditional fantasy feel, which Wild Sign has. I have a primordial being inhabiting Northern California. I just had a lot of fun writing this book. And I didn't realize
It was seriously creepy.
Good, yes,
It was seriously creepy.
good. And
Yes,
I didn't,
yes. The monster was really just.
oh, good.
But I found that too with the others, is that when I started writing the others series, I was so excited that they could wear jeans and buy pizza because I didn't have to make up equivalents for it.
Right?
You know.
So there's a give and take with going from traditional to urban fantasy and back. There's kind of a there are things you get to do in one that you can't do in the other. That's really awesome. I have to say, with urban fantasy, it's really fun when I don't know where a scene takes place. I just drive to some place in the Tri-Cities and I go, oh, this would work. And then I figure out how, and I take photos so that I get the angles right, and so that I know how far one place is from the other and where things are, and then try really hard not to over describe. So when I'm writing the scene in, whereas in traditional fantasy, I remember going, I think it was in Ravenstrike. It was in Ravenstrike, and I'm trying to describe buildings and rooms in buildings, and I'm like, I'm so tired of describing rooms and buildings. I have no idea what's in this room. We'll put clothes, we'll put cloth in this room. Why? I don't know. It's weird. Let's go on.
Yeah. Of course, for me in urban fantasy, if I'm looking at something that is kind of a real place, because I'm geographically challenged, my first thing is, I don't remember how to get there. I'm just going to erase that street.
Right? I had set this book up, Wild Sign up. I knew where it took place because I ran into a friend of mine sent me a video that had been not the horror video, but this little like a newsy story that had been done in in Happy Camp, California. And I just couldn't resist sticking Charles in Happy Camp. And I wanted somebody to come up to Charles and say, wow, you're just not a happy camper, because it made me laugh. So that's Northern California. And I had all of these plans. I was going to go down there. We were going to camp out there. We were going to float the river.
I wasn't.
That's Sparky. She doesn't like water. She would have come with me because she's scared of things, but she does them anyway. She's the only person I know who's scared of height, who likes to go mountain climbing. So, there's that. And I had all of these plans, and then COVID hit. So I was stuck. Let's see, I watched Camp, which was the found footage horror film. I will never get those 90 minutes back. It is literally the worst horror film I ever saw, but it was videoed in Happy Camp. So I got to see all these places in Happy Camp that I could use.
It's actually pretty.
It is actually pretty. Google Earth is my friend. I have been up that road in Northern California a couple of times, but it was a decade ago, and I never planned to write a book there. So it was that was the hardest thing about writing Wild Sign, is I had to do so much of it remotely. Thank heavens for people, video logging their vacations and diaries, and I wish I can remember it. There was a self-published, very good author who did a really good mystery, and he described in detail how the police department worked in rural Northern California. That was super useful for me, and I bless his heart. And since it was written by a police officer, I assume he got all the policing details right. And it turned out I didn't use very much of it in the book, but it just gave me, when I'm writing a book in the real world, I feel like I need to know enough about the time and place that I can feel comfortable in there to put the story in.
Mm-hmm.
And he just gave me enough detail of Northern California that I felt that I could do that. And actually thought I was going to bring in the police a lot more, and didn't. The story didn't require it, but I'd rather have too much information than not enough. And if I feel like I don't have enough information, it's really hard for me to write the story.
The place I want to go now, Patty, is I want to go visit Little Stonehenge. Is it still there?
Oh, it sure is. Maryhill? Yeah, Maryhill, the Maryhill Museum, which is this beautiful, this is from Rivermarkt. It's this beautiful full-size national quality museum with beautiful artwork, all sorts of cool things. Set in Murray Hill, which is no longer a town. I think there's a few people of vineyards in there now, but it wasn't a corporate town. It burnt down in what, 1950, 1960, somewhere in there.
Believing it was inhabited by
Right,
zombies.
right. Sparky had my kids believing it was inhabited by zombies. There's a nice campground out there, and but it's 100 miles from the nearest town. This beautiful museum. There's literally no town anywhere near it. And then they have Stonehenge, which they built as a memorial for the World War I soldiers who died from that county, all 17 of them. They built a Stonehenge, a full-size replica Stonehenge. They made it of cement because I think there was something about they couldn't find the right kind of stone to quarry, I think, and bring it out. So they built it of cement, but its angles are quite a little bit wrong because the builder didn't listen to Sam Hill, who built it. The builders didn't listen to him, and so I think it's about 16 degrees off, so it doesn't work, as a solar calendar the way the original Stonehenge did. But the druids still gathered there in the solstices, as Sparky says. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I probably drove by it for 10 years before I realized that it was over there, because there's is that interstate on that side of the Columbia River?
Interstate 84 is on the Oregon side.
Right, I-84 goes on the Oregon side of the Columbia River, and there's a big bridge across there at Briggs, Oregon, and the Stonehenge you can see from the interstate, but you have to know to look for it. If you don't know to look for it, you won't be able to see it.
I made you guys go camping with me.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. That's Sparky made us go camping, and that's why I knew it was there. And it took me about another 10 years to decide exactly the right book to put it in there. But I knew that if we had a cement Stonehenge within an hour's or 2 hours drive of the Tri-Cities, it was going to come out. Just like
we'll take them there.
Just like I knew I was going to destroy the suspension bridge.
Yep.
It just had to happen.
Your favorite bridge, you had to blow it up.
Which is the fun of urban fantasy. You can,
Given the current travel bans, is there a spot either one of you would like to go to research your next book or two that you couldn't go right now?
Anne?
I don't know, because I don't know where the next book is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Okay, you have.
Someday I would like to see Yosemite.
Yosemite?
Someday I would like to see Yosemite. Yeah.
Oh, and then we're not that far from there. You could come over and stay. And it's all seriousness, my office is, the only one who goes up there is my dog. Are you allergic to dogs too?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that wouldn't work. I'll figure it out.
We'll get one of those giant plastic translucent balls and we'll put her in.
Really fun.
Oh, that would be really fun. Yeah, if you go to Yosemite, let me know. We'll meet you there. We'll go camping.
I don't know if this would be something that with your worlds, Anne, because they're pretty much distinctively different, but I've seen about Patty that we had David Weber come once and talk about the problem where he was doing all these side spin-offs of Honor Harrington, and he ran into the slight little problem where historically Nelson dies at Trafalgar, and so Honor was supposed to die in like book 15 or so of the Honor series, but meanwhile he and Eric Flynn had written a little slavery sort of human, DNA messing little trilogy on the side, and they'd screwed up his timeline. And he realized the kids wouldn't be old enough and Honor would be dead, and that was a big damn problem, so they kept her alive. Have you run into any problems with Alpha and Omega versus Mercy Central, shall we say?
So timing issues a little bit. Actually, it's funny, I have a little bit of a timing issue right now. I realize I have some short stories I want to turn into a novel. But the short story has a 2-year moratorium on publishing. So I'm going to have to work around that, which means that the novel might not be able to come out until 2 years have passed. So that's not quite the same thing. I did a little bit. So in the first Mercy books, the first Alpha and Omega story, Alpha and Omega, takes place between the last 2 chapters of Mooncalled, which is the first book in the Mercy Thompson series. And then the Mercy books go and they skip time. And I couldn't do that with the Alpha and Omega books. And so for a while I was writing one series on one timeline, and then the other series on the other timeline, which meant, like Cry Wolf, which is the hunting ground, which is the second of the Alpha Mega series, came out, and it took place like a year and a half before the Mercy book that had just come out. And it really was confusing to readers. I don't blame them. It was confusing to everybody, but I had to have Anna and Charles's romance and the events in their world catch up to where the Alpha and Omega, or to where the Mercy Thompson series are. Right now, I'm doing that. They're all in the same timeline. If one comes out, the next one comes out, and it takes place afterwards. And it's just much easier on me, very much easier on the readers, and I don't have to coax them through that. But these are decisions you make, and then have to live with them the rest of your life, or the next book anyway.
One of the things I've found with the Black Jewels, because when I wrote the Black Jewels trilogy, I wrote it just for me. I didn't think anyone else was going to ever read it. Ha ha ha.
Right. That's a good joke. That's a good joke.
Yeah. So when I made the long-lived races, there was like, that's just cool. They're long-lived, and I gave them this general feel of, you have long plateaus you have quick growth spurts and then long plateaus, so that eventually you get up to adulthood at about 1700 years. But now, because all of a sudden I have this whole group of kids, I'm getting a lot of questions from well, but they've been in middle grade, middle school for like 500 years. Why haven't they learned anything? And I go, we have to do a little hand waving here and just go with the fact that I didn't know it was my first world. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah, I really hate those things you
about
do,
their ages.
those decisions you make kind of casually and then have to live with for 15 books. Yeah, I know that Bujold always said that she put in psi powers in Free Falling. Is that the right title? Ethan of Athos. Ethan of Athos. She put in psi powers.
It's
And she
Falling
always
Free, I believe.
really hated that
Yeah.
she did that. She didn't use it in any of the other Miles Corsican books. And it really bothered her that she had done that. And I thought, yeah, well, there are decisions I made very early on in the Mercy Thompson series that I have to live with now. How many, if you add both books series together, it's like 23, 24 books, right, Sparky? Is that?
So there's 6 Alpha and Omega.
6 Alpha and Omega.
There's, you're right, in Mercy 13.
Right.
Shifting Shadows.
So I'm writing Mercy 13. So that's 20 books into the Mercy Thompson series. And there are things, and I'm not going to tell people what it is, that really bother me, that we have to live with, because then it would probably start bothering readers too. But there are decisions that I casually made, just like threw up my hands and said, okay, well, we'll just do this. And now I have to deal with it every time. I used to say that the bit with calling Mercy a walker was one of those things, because people kept mixing her up with skinwalkers. But actually, I just kind of feel like sometimes my subconscious is much smarter and more farsighted than me. But the whole walker thing really comes up in Wild Sign, and it comes up in a really interesting way. And it kind of surprised me too. I didn't realize I was doing this. So, right. So. Yeah. 13 books in, 14 books in, something like that, more than that, 18 books in. Something I did casually that I've been regretting ever since actually worked out really kind of cool. So I'm happy with that. Vindication. I planned it that way. I'm sure of it.
Well, that leads to my question I was coming to about the deep planning, because if you've met Kevin Anderson, Kevin writes outlines. They're thicker than most people's novels. They're scary looking. How much did you sit down when you started The Whole World of Mercy and go, okay, this is where she's from? Like, did you know who her father was when you started out, who he really was, and so on?
No. No, I think my for the Mercy Thompson series, I think I ended up with about a 3-page like a 3-page list of the things I knew, and I turned that into and 30 pages of Mooncalled that I turned into my editor as this is what we're going to write. But no, there were a lot of things I didn't know about her. And I wrote exactly one book by outline, and it was the most difficult book I've ever had to write, putting my fingers to the keyboard, because I knew how it ended. It wasn't fun. I write, I want to know how it ends too. You too, Anne?
Yeah, I'm an organic writer.
Oh, I like
I figure out enough where I feel like I've got weight, and then I can't go any further until I start writing the story, because then I have to find out what happened.
Yeah.
And even if I have an idea of an ending, I have an ending I'm working toward, I don't know how they get there.
Jane Yolen told me it was Writing into the Mist. And I really like that idea, that I have kind of an idea of the direction I'm going and where my goal is. And only as I get closer to the story can I see how the shape the journey is going to take us in. And I think it sounds so kind of cool and much better than Pantser. Right? So I'm a mist writer. I write into the mist. Ooh.
And what about you? Is the next Others book going to feature Meg, or back with the other blood prophets, or do you know where it's going to
go? Well, the book that I just turned in is called Crowbones, and it's in the Lake Silence area. So it's Vicky and Aggie on Trickster Night. So they are teaching the rest of the Terra Indigene about the trick-or-treat version of this human celebration. And the others love it, because the ones that can't look totally human, they've already got their costume, and poor Grimshaw is there checking the kids' teeth to figure out if they're others or they're just human children. And everything is going along really well, sort of. There has to be some negotiation with the treats, because Conan the bear has the bowl of candy, and Cougar has the heads or tails bowl, which he's offering to all of the little children. Do you want the mouse head or the mouse tail? And then the Crow Guard boogeyman shows up, and people start dying, because it's a Vicky and Aggie story. So
that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome.
I'd be more afraid to sorry.
I'm on chapter 2 of the book that's going to come out the same time as the book that you just turned in. Anne Sowards does not pull her hair out when you turn your books in the way they do when I turn my books in. I vow to be better.
Let's get that on Zoom. I'd like to see Anne doing that. Anne, speaking of you, though, Anne, I'd be afraid to give the others the choice of trick.
Right?
Yeah. No, nobody wants to give them the choice of trick. Because one of the people who come calling are Monkey Man.
There are sometimes
we get a better look at the ones called the Five.
The descriptions you give me of the books that you're writing just make me go cackling into my room. It's awesome. This is one of them. Thank you.
Oh boy.
So yes, there are two others stories coming out. One is Crowbones, which comes out next March, and then I think you also have a story in Heroic Hearts, the anthology.
Yes, I do. Mm-hmm.
And I have another story in that, which has new characters because it's set in the Mediterranean Sea, and it's called The Dark Ship.
Yay!
So we have a couple of new characters to meet, and some of the creepiest elders that I ever created. They just
That's a nice lead in, Patty. There's a couple scenes in one of the books where Zed, shall we say, gets a bit perturbed, but I don't think we've ever seen Zed sort of go full frontal ballistic yet. And given the character you based him on from ancient German mythology, I think he's still quite capable.
No, Z, yeah. I thought he had fun in Stormcurse, where he went after and got to kill the giant zombie. I think he was an ogre, and to go battle with the mythological zombie army was a lot of fun. But yeah, no, at some point in time, I'm sure that he will show his roots as a terrifying evil fae.
Oh, and Fire Touch,
And
she
Fire-
referenced that they never found all the pieces.
Oh
of
yeah,
that.
yeah. Sparky's right. In Fire Touch, they reference that they never found all the pieces of his enemies that he took care of.
I mean, there's been moments of action, but maybe not like considered sort of fully on the screen. And somebody wants to see what your shirt says. Could you show the crowd your shirt?
It's awesome.
I can't
The hair
read
back.
Walk is
upside down.
hard when I figure out how to breathe fire, is what it says.
We thought that was pretty cool. Yes. Frank, they don't know many runners I'd like to give that ability to. It certainly would, shall we say, make panels dangerous.
Right? Right. But also nice and well-mannered.
Well, if I was going to let anyone have
Well,
it, would be the women. Let's face it, the women in the world in general have been messed with by men for generations. And if anyone should be able to breathe fire, it should be them.
But then we would stay off the smoke detectors and the waters. So,
Well,
Yeah.
we could cool things down.
I always wanted a little portable EMP so I could turn one around on the cars who are trying to run me over in crosswalks and just kill their car. Maybe we could come up with a fire breathing in like a controlled cone. You could just take out one person restrainfully and maybe it wouldn't make too much debris. But that's more than we need to go into probably on that. Is your book going to come at the same time, Patty? Are we going to maybe hopefully by then have the joint tour again? You think?
I hope so. That kind of depends on Penguin a bit, and it depends on me getting this book done. It does look hopeful. When I talked to Dan Dos Santos about the cover of the next book, he about fainted when I told him I had a chapter done. So which looks hopeful. And unless we have another pandemic, or I don't know, my house burns down or something terrible happens this year, I should be able to get this book done by May or June, in which case they I know, right? But that's kind of the way my life has been the last 5 or 6 years. It's like just there was a cartoon. Oh my gosh, it's the cartoon that they have for Dilbert. It was a Dilbert cartoon in which one of the characters says to Dilbert, and he says, "Okay, looks like all of these unexplained disasters cause these problems. I want you to tell me where all these unpredicted disasters are going to happen this next year." Oh, look, on August 16th, we're going to have a tornado, right? And I kind of feel that way. But hopefully we'll be able to get done. Like I'm thinking, like in the end of June. And if that's the case, then they should be able to put us back together, because I love running around with Anne. We have so much fun together.
Sounds like they'll publish a joke about the auditor looking at the books and saying, "Why didn't you just publish these books? Ignore all those ones that nobody bought." Where was I going to go with that? I got distracted here. Has the times we're in changed what you're writing? I've talked about this in the past, and sometimes if they're having a really good year or a really bad year, it bleeds into the book more than just their sort of perpetual mindsets of issues like people who are obsessed with violence or corruption or whatever.
Well, somebody early on in March asked me if I was going to have the plague appear or a pandemic appear in any of my books, and I said no, it's already been done. But yeah, of course it affected my writing. It took me a long time to actually be able to sit down and write, because there's just kind of the zeitgeist around here is trauma. I mean, the tension in the air is pretty strong. Even out here in my horse farm, people are scared and worried and worried for their friends who are sick. I know people personally who have passed away with COVID. One of my very good fans I used to look forward to every book signing passed away from COVID. So it's worrisome, and it's hard to write. the whole thing with the artist in a, the artist who is broke and locked
Starving
in
in a
and
garret.
starving in a garret, producing great things. That's garbage. I can't do anything when I'm stressed out. I can't write at all. So how about you, Anne? Did it affect you too?
It did. It was, well, I think some of it bled into the second draft of the Queen's Weapons, which is why it's ripping everybody's heart out.
Thank you.
But when I was thinking about the next book, I deliberately, because I had an idea for this trickster night thing with Vicky, but Vicky is somebody I can hang out with when things aren't going right, because her world is pretty much, I'm just going to kind of stick a fork into the electric socket and see what happens, because it just, but she has that attitude that she's trying so hard, and all of these big, huge things are kind of either working for her or living around her. And you know that there's got to be bodies, because it's kind of a cozy thriller with fangs. So Vicky started out, and I said, yeah, we'll just go with Vicky and see what happens. And what happens is we ended up with a fair number of dead bodies.
Well, the science fiction book came out a few years ago where people started living a couple centuries longer. And the problem that came apart of it, I hadn't thought about it, was that all the younger generations weren't getting money and power. Something in your world of the Black Jewels, you might have a lot of homicides going on. The kids get tired of waiting for dad and grandpa to croak and give them all the jobs and the money they've been waiting for. So there could be a whole lot of patricide and such going on there.
You should write a book, Dwayne.
If they become demon dead, they may not necessarily write a will in favor of the child who kills them.
Yeah.
Well, I think, going back to that question, Dwayne, I think Wild Sign is darker than I expected. It's darker than most of my books, and I didn't really realize that until my friends who got early books and were coming back to me, my family and a few friends, to talk to me about it. And I wrote the single scariest character I think I've ever written, and it's a side character, which was really fun. A garden. It was a garden. I'll say that, and people who read it will know what I'm talking about. Right? Yeah. You know which garden I'm talking about, right? And I'll use it later on. I think that's something that will come up again.
Okay,
and so I knew that part was dark. It was only talking to my friends that I realized that the whole book has is a little more horrific, than a little more horror element to it than I usually put in my urban fantasy. Not that I can't, but I haven't. But this one definitely delves into some darker issues and some darker things, and a couple classic horror movies, as a matter of fact. So, well, classic horror movies and a horror writer.
I've got a handful of questions.
Right, I don't give things away.
Sorry.
So yeah.
I want to start feeding some of the questions we've been getting, if you don't mind. So the first one I see is Anna and Charles talk about adopting a child. You mentioned that if Mercy or main characters got pregnant, they would quit adventuring. So does that mean you're thinking about stopping Alpha and Omega?
Anna and Mercy. So Anna and Charles, no, they will continue. The one that's going to be hard is if Mercy gets a child, and I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't want to give away. I don't want to give away the end of Wild Sign if people have not read it yet. But I will say that I've always thought that Anna and Charles would end up with children and continuing adventuring, because they're fine. I mean, they have the world's scariest grandpa to leave the children with, and I think that's fine, right? Mercy has abandonment issues. She was abandoned as a child more than once, and like 3 or 4 times. By the time she and Adam get together, she's really, really leery about relationships because she's been abandoned so much. When she has a child, that child is never going to have a babysitter. That's just never going to be a thing. And I don't know how I can work around that for more than 1 or 2 books. I think I can write a couple of books like that, but after a while, you know, throwing characters into nasty situations just because nasty situations happen. I like books in which the characters happen to the plot, not the plot happens to the characters. And you can do it for a while,
I
but
think,
go ahead.
I think Warren and Kyle would make great babysitters.
Right?
Yeah.
I do. I think she's got babysitters at hand. I just don't think she'll use them. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. I never say never, except when I do say never, but you can't believe me unless it's, you know.
She lies for a living.
I lie for a living, right? So, but unless I hate myself very much, I will not give Mercy and Adam a child. Although in the real world that exists inside my head, of course they have kids. Of course they go on and have a big happy family. But if she survives, who knows? But I'm not sure that will happen on paper.
I'm just picturing the poor boyfriend or girlfriend comes to the door and has to meet Adam and Mercy to get it grilled. That would be fun. I got a question here about gray witches, Patty. Someone to know, more about them because they were mentioned in, was it Storm Cursed, I think, but they want to know more about them if you're going to give away anything without spoiling.
Okay, so ask me the question one more time.
They want to know about gray witches. A lot of books have white or black parts of the order, but I don't think you ever mentioned the gray witches.
So my white witches only use power that they themselves generate. They power their magic on emotion and pain and powerful things that affect your psyche, and that's how they work. So the white witches only have themselves to get power from. Black witches take power from others unwillingly. They take unwilling power from others. Gray witches take power from others that is given willingly to them. But gray witches tend to kind of slide to the black because that's where all the power is. So that's the best explanation I can give you for the different kinds of witchcrafts in my world. I just like to make good people be weak and look like victims to the nasty evils because it makes for a lot of good storytelling. So yeah, so the gray witches you deal with warily, and most witches are gray witches because the black witches stink, have a psychic stink, and most of the rest of the supernatural communities go after them and kill them if they can. And until we heard about a certain family that of witches, most witches, because they killed each other off shortly before the Spanish Inquisition, most witches don't have powerful covens that can protect them. Most of the black witches don't have powerful covens that can protect them. So that's what limits them. And I don't know if I have anything more to say. We'll stop there.
Yeah, I remember when Mercy was victimized and how that turned out for the guy who did it. That was one of the more hair-raising books for me ever.
Yeah, that doesn't work out very well for people.
I have a question, but she wants to know if you're going to put Mercy and Annie together in a story or a novel.
Too many main characters. I'm not going to say never. Again, I'm not going to say never, but it's hard to put together a really good story in which you have essentially 4 main characters. For me, in an urban fantasy, it works really well in like one of those big sweeping historical fantasies like George Martin writes and things. But the kind of stories, kind of tight focus stories I like to write, I don't know how well it will work out. I will not say never because that's not in my, again, not I've learned never to say that because that my psyche seems to think it's a challenge and it bites me and I have to go and do it. And I don't like tormenting myself. So we'll just say probably no plans now, probably not. They do know each other. So.
Well, yeah, man.
I like the fact that they get mentioned. You know, you do have that crossover sense of Mercy and Anna being aware of each other, talking to each other, knowing what each is doing. So it feels like a full world.
Thank you. That's kind of my aim. Yes. I like to say that we writers are all crazy, and it's the only profession in the world in which being crazy is a useful thing.
Yes.
I'm trying to got to phrase this one question here. We've met, shall we say, a couple of members of Mercy's family on the not quite normal side. She had her mother. Hopefully her mother's scary enough. And they want to know, have you thought about her lifespan and what special things she may have picked up in terms of her husband's not too thrilled with the idea she might die at like, 90 or 100, but or lesser, given what she gets into, but
Right. I'm not sure. Maybe it's not going to be a problem, an issue for her. I don't know. I've given a lot of thought. And actually, I shouldn't say I don't know. I do know. I've given a lot of thought. I actually know the answer to this question, but I'm not going to tell you guys yet. So we'll have to and I may never. I mean, we may not get to that point in the books, right? Isn't that fun? Yeah. I used to tell when I used to teach, I used to tell my students, I've got, in order to get a teaching certificate, you have to pass a class in sadomasochism. And you have to like torturing your students. And if you don't like torturing your students, you can't get your you can't get your teaching certificate. So all of your teachers really do like to torture you. And it really makes me happy when you whine about the assignments I give you. I feel the same thing about writers. All writers need a little bit of sadomasochism. We need to enjoy tormenting our readers just a little bit. And it just warms the cold cockles of my heart to hear people whine about things that I have done.
the first times we met Jim Butcher, we talked about a lot of ways Harry Dresden was sort of like the modern James Rockford, because Rockford gets thrown out of a car, people break his nose, all this crap goes wrong. Jim goes, oh yeah, whatever can go bad with Harry, let's throw it in the book, and what else can go bad? We'll think of something, because otherwise it wouldn't be any fun.
Happy people don't have adventures.
If anybody has any other questions, now would be a good time to get them out, because we're going to run out of time here. I think I've asked most of them. Let's see what else we got here. Just I need to check my email list here.
So, Anne, what are you working on next? Are you working on another story after the crow story?
I don't know. The muse hasn't told me.
Oh, you're in that fallow period after you finish the last book and you just are waiting for something else to come.
Yeah, because that was the main thing that I found about last year, and being in the pandemic and the isolation, I could only think about one story at a time. I just did not have the creative energy to look beyond the story that I was writing. So when I turned in Crowbones, I said, I don't know. But the muse has given me a reading list about ghost stories and touch, which is psychological, and the connection of physical and brain. Also the book Fallacy, about adventures in the animal penis.
I have a really good friend who's a wonderful discussion.
And a book about the invention of murder, for Victorians. And I have no idea what the muse is going to do with those things, but that's my reading list to start to think about the next story.
I have these days in which, especially if the writing's kind of going slowly, where I'll look something up online. I need a little bit of information, and I'll just grab something else and end up following it into weird little corners of the internet. Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
Patty, so I've got.
But I do that with books.
Patty, we've got a fan who wants to know about if the alpha cannot be disobeyed, if there's some, depending on how, there are books where the alpha seems to give an order and people sort of weasel around. There are books where like Bran says this and you can't do anything about it. Is there some sort of level of?
Sure. I mean, if an alpha looks at you, if you are in the alpha's pack and he wants to put some energy into his command, it's very hard to disobey. And the further you are in the power structure from him, the harder it is to disobey. There's a natural inclination, just like if you're in a room with somebody who's a natural leader, you see it as a teacher, you would see it all the time in a classroom. There'll be one or two kids that kind of organize everything in the classroom. So on that level, of course you can disobey, but you have to decide that that's what you want to do. And it goes all the way down to the level of if you have a powerful, dominant alpha werewolf who tells you to do something, you just do it. And some of the packs are structured with an abusive alpha, it can get to be very difficult for somebody to disobey. So it's not that they can't, it's that inclination is not there, that they're inclined to obey them. I also find in my writing that I really refuse to make hard and fast rules like you would in a gaming world, where in a gaming world you say, this never happens. I like to look at it more like in the real world, where there are tendencies and there are things that can make it very difficult. But I really don't like having a hard and fast rule that can never be broken. So if I say, oh, werewolves mate for life, mated werewolves are mated for life, and then I have something, and then I show that it doesn't always work that way. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with not having rules that are absolute, even if the people around in the world believe that they're absolute. That's all right with me as a writer. So.
Okay. Got a fan that wants to know that since we've seen selkies now, since we remarked if you have mermaids and other things in the background, they're going to pop up some point soon?
Probably not, maybe not soon. I have a problem with water creatures, stories that take place in the water, because it's really hard to do kind of interactive stories that haven't already been done. Air creatures that live in the water and creatures that live in the air have a hard time coexisting, and without coexisting, you don't get good stories. River Marked was probably as close as I will get for a monster story. And right now I don't have anybody that actively lives in the water. Are there fae in the water, river fae and ocean fae? Absolutely. Am I going to bring them into the stories? We'll just have to see. Selkies are easier. Kelpies and selkies are easier because they can exist on dry land. But some of the mermaids, the marrow folk, things like that are a little bit harder to deal with for me to write a really good story around. Doesn't mean it can't happen. I would probably have to take up scuba diving. And I have to confess, I have been in non-swimming pool water exactly 0 times since River Mark was written. And I don't want to blame it on River Mark, but I think that it's always in the back of my mind. There's something underneath the water. I don't have any problems with swimming pools at all, but I have a little bit of a problem with natural waterways right now. So we'll see.
We may run out of time, or somebody wants, I don't want to say this too much of a spoiler. Has someone correctly guessed Sherwood's identity?
So when I was last at University Bookstore, this is part of it. I kind of let the cat out of the bag and then asked them not to tell people, and they've been very good and not told people. So at this point, you'll probably find out a lot more about him in the next Mercy book. I hope nobody's disappointed. I don't think he's going to be, as in my head, he's not somebody who's super famous outside of the werewolves. So they'll all know who he is. But I'm not sure that, I'm not at this point, I'm not going to swear it's going to work this way, but he's not going to be somebody as, I have no plans for him being somebody super famous in our world. How's that?
A whole bunch of questions. This one woman's sister says, will Honey ever make it to be an alpha, and will there ever be a female alpha in the books that we see?
There are several candidates for female alphas in my head. Whether they'll make it to the book, I don't know. I would not want to be hosting from Dead Heat. I would not want to be hosting right now because he's got an alpha werewolf in the making who is in his pack, female, and he's got to deal with. I have there was a lone wolf, Kara, who may make another appearance sometime. Not the Kara the young girl, but the Kara who is too many Karas, but the Kara who is the lone wolf that Mercy talks about in Mooncalled. And I think that's maybe the only place she comes up. Yeah, I think that there's room for female alphas. we'll just see what happens when we get there.
Okay. One of your fans wants to know, is it this still going to be the schedule pretty much of one Mercy, then one Anna? Or are you going to switch it? Or is it?
So what we've been doing is 2 Mercy and 1 Anna, and I think that will continue to be the case. I'm going to do my best. I say this every year, and every year it doesn't work. I'm going to do my best to see if I can pick up the speed and get some things going. I have a story in my head. I have an Aseel story that's trying really hard to be a book that right now is a collection of short stories, which is one of the stories in that Heroic Hearts anthology that's coming out, I think, May of 2022.
Mhm.
And so I want to write a book that encases all of those date stories of Aseels and pulls them together into a single story. But I'm not sure with the contracts I have on the short stories that I can manage it, because Heroic Hearts has a 2-year after publication, and that's going to push that into 2024, and I'm not sure that I'm willing to wait that long, so I will figure out something. Yeah, at this point it's 2 Mercies and an Alpha and Omega, and then 2 Mercies and an Alpha and Omega.
Somebody wants to know about characters that have left. Gabriel and Sam and Ariana, are they okay? We're going to see them more soon?
Sam and Ariana, you're going to see a little bit at the end of Wild Sign. And that's all I'm going to say on that. Gabriel, you probably see a little bit in the next Mercy book. I have some plans for Gabriel. I have some plans for, I don't know if they'll work out, but you know, this is what we Writers into the Mist, that's what we're calling ourselves. We Writers in the Mist do, is we have little things that we collect. Little characters and things that we have planned for them, and if the story works out and it needs it, we can dump them in there. And if a different story or a better idea occurs to me, I'll do that with them. But yeah, for sure, Gabriel will be back. His mother will be back.
Oh, I think we're going to run out of time here pretty quickly here. It's okay. So Anne, when you hang out with Patty, does she give you ideas to do bad things in your books? Or?
No, Anne gives me ideas.
No,
About
she
bad
never
things.
does. No,
We're nice people.
no, we never enable each other. We never enable each other.
I see.
And remember, she lies for a living too.
Yeah.
I traveled with both ladies, they're both naughty.
Fictional writers are professional liars, something like that.
Right? Yeah. But at least we tell you we're lying. Fiction.
Well, I hope if you tell me you're telling me the truth, you're not lying about telling me the truth.
Would I do that, Dwayne?
I don't think so.
I have to say, I have to watch myself. When people ask me a question that I don't know the answer to, I am quite liable to give them an answer that sounds perfectly logical and good. And then I have to stop myself and say, you know, I have no idea. I'm just making this stuff up.
I'm always surprised nobody's like copied or patented the. Remember Robert Jordan had the RAFO cards, which stood for read and find out, which meant usually I'm not going to tell you. You got the bloody wait until I get around to it. And it also sometimes meant I'm not going to ever tell you. There are things in the series he knew he would never tell his fans, and it drove some of them literally quite crazy, I think. So I don't know.
It's fun. We like doing that.
And you got anything else you want to add in here before we run out of Zoom time?
No, it was really good to see everybody. Yay, everybody.
Yay! It's the first time Anne and I have seen each other in 2 years. And it's really hard to have really good friends who live on the other side of the country. So
This is
darn this pandemic.
I guess one last question. One of your fans wants to know about pronunciations, about how we pronounce Stefan or Stefan and Aseel and such.
Here's my real story. My real story in pronunciations is it pronounce it how you like it. And if you like it, it's good. It's fine. I say Leah. I've heard Leah. I don't care. I say Stefan. You say Stefan. I don't care. I say Aseel, and Aseel is a real word, so you probably ought to say it correctly, but I don't know if I do it. So there you go. It means pure blood. Aseel does. Anybody else? Mercy is easy. Marsilia is Marsilia. That's actually how it's pronounced. So real words are pronounced how they are. But the cool thing about old characters, like somebody like Stefan, he's from Italy. He came over to the States. If someone pronounces his name American, he doesn't care. That's fine. You can do that.
If he does, they die.
Well,
If
on
he
that
does,
note,
they die. That's right. Yeah. No, he wouldn't care.
thank you very much. I think we're gonna have to go before they kick us off. Thanks for coming in and being our co-star, Ann. It's great to see you. And Patty, you know,
Good to see you too.
I was discussing with a friend if we're actually gonna have hugging again next year. I'll be curious to see if you give me a hug next time I see you.
Oh, I get to hug each other. I'm so excited. Not bump elbows, not do the Star Trek thing. I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you all for coming. Everyone have a good night, and hopefully we'll see you all soon on some of the upcoming events. And feel free to go to Mystery Bookstore and buy some of Patty and Ann's books. It would make us all very happy.
It'll make you very happy. Anne is an amazing writer. I love your books, Anne. I'm so excited. I can't wait to get to so I can get to, well, I'm not sure I want to finish this one because then I have to wait till the next one comes out. So there is that. But, well, okay, unless I can strong arm somebody into sending me the manuscript, which maybe I can.
Well, you know, you've done it before.
It's hard to twist your arm from here, but I'm pretty good. Sparky's pretty good at that too. We'll gang up on you. We'll see. Thank you very
I'll get on
much.
my knees and
All right, guys.
Thanks for joining us tonight, Anne. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.